Hello, welcome to Comic Tropes! You all know me, ho 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 ho, what up bitches, it's Santa! So, I am on vacation this year because Santa ain't going down any chimneys until I know that everyone there is vaccinated. So, while I'm on break, I thought I'd take you through a little bit of Santa history, or, as I call it, Santistory. Trademark pending. There are plenty of comics out there with stories about Santa being nice and teaming up with Superman or whatever. Today, I'm going to show you 10 examples of evil Santas in comic books from the 1950s all the way up through today. So, go ahead and eat all the cookies and milk that you were saving for me, because this year, Santa's going to keep his diabetes in check and show you 10 weird stories about evil Santa Clauses. Remember to hit like and subscribe, kids. Let's get on with the show. In December of 1953, no comics were hotter than the EC horror titles. In Vault of Horror number 35, Johnny Craig wrote and illustrated this macabre tale involving an evil Santa that's more about the horror of what you don't see and will come up within your own imagination. A horror story set at Christmas? It's really nothing new. We've all heard about Krampus by this point, and if you haven't, check out the Comic Tropes video I did about Tarot. Heck, in 1963, Andy Williams released It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year, which includes the lyrics, "There'll be scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago." Yeah. You know how we all get around and tell each other ghost stories under the Christmas tree, right? That's definitely a thing. We grew up with our parents scaring the hell out of us every year for Christmas. You know, it just really isn't Christmas until you sit down to a turkey dinner with your pants soaked in urine because you were just so scared earlier that day. So why not do it in a comic book format? This story begins with a murder. A wife has clubbed her husband, Joseph, over the head on Christmas Eve. Her plan is to collect the insurance money. Interestingly, the woman shows great concern for her young daughter, Carol, and makes sure that she is asleep and safe. But the widow's plan was to get rid of the body, and a radio announces that a homicidal maniac has escaped from the local asylum. He's said to have killed 4 women and stolen a Santa Claus suit. The woman realizes she can't risk moving the body outside and frantically locks her house up. In one especially scary moment, she sees the murderer outside, although we, the reader, are not shown what she witnesses. She can't call the police, so she drags her dead husband down into the basement, only to realize that the noise has woken up her young daughter. In the final panel, she is horrified to learn that her daughter was woken up by all the noise she made and let in the murderer, believing him to be Santa. This one's all up to your imagination, but the artwork by Johnny Craig is typical top-tier work. Detailed and engaging, this story features the scariest bad Santa of this entire list, in a story that is laden with a paranoid tone consistent from the first page to the last. Now we'll get a bit of tonal whiplash as we jump into a Spider-Man story by writer Peter David, well known for including jokes and one-liners in his comics. Issue 112 of Spectacular Spider-Man features art by Mark Beecham, and a cover that appears to be a parody of both The Terminator and Cobra. It's a story where Peter Parker can't seem to find anyone available to hang out with on Christmas. His aunt sounds busy, and so do his co-workers. His friend Harry has just had a kid, and Peter basically hangs up on him as soon as he hears a baby crying. Peter tries to call Mary Jane, but gets her voicemail because she's luxuriating in a bath. Meanwhile, there's a subplot about Peter's next-door neighbor, Bambi, at a mall with her son. The mall Santa there is asking kids for their addresses. Later on, we see that it's so that he can rob them. However, Bambi wakes up in the middle of the night and alerts the mall Santa villain, still wearing his Santa suit and armed with a gun. Fortunately for Bambi, Peter's spidey sense goes off and he smashes through the wall to save Bambi. Santa dashes away and Spider-Man's webs are blocked by Bambi's roommates Candy and Randy. By the time Spider-Man can get past them, the burglar Santa has run up to the apartment roof and vanished. However, the next morning Peter gets a call from work that they got a last-minute Santa to appear at their work party and donate toys to kids. Peter arrives and finds out that it is the burglar Santa, now announcing that he has been reformed. The unseen person that stopped the burglar has also handed him a note to give to Peter to call his aunt, where Peter learns that his Aunt May is available and is hanging out with her friend and Mary Jane. It's strongly implied that Santa, and by that I mean me, stopped the burglar and saved Peter's Christmas. What can I say? After letting someone dress up like me and murder some folks, I had to step in and reform the next bad Santa. Unfortunately, this was just the first of 3 stories from Marvel featuring criminals disguising themselves as a mall Santa, aka the discount version of the real deal. In 1989, Bob Layton wrote and illustrated his second-to-last issue of Iron Man after a lengthy run on the title. This issue has Santa supposedly shooting Iron Man and proclaims the title Ho Homicide. The story inside is mainly about Iron Man hunting down Madame Mask, who he believes has killed his girlfriend. It's a whole thing. While that doesn't offer up any leads, in his civilian life, Tony Stark is planning a gala event to give away toys for charity. Meanwhile, there's a subplot featuring the supervillain Taskmaster training a bunch of anonymous henchmen. One of them tampers with a fellow student's gun, which leads to the poor man being killed in a training course. But because the trainee owns up to it, Taskmaster allows the lethal competition. Another trainee has her room booby-trapped. The remaining 3 henchmen are put in an arena, blindfolded, and told only one of them can remain standing. It does make me wonder what the point of any of the previous training exercises were. Were they getting points or something? It seems to not matter because the final event is just a free-for-all with only one winner. Taskmaster, call me. I have some ideas on how you can improve your classes. The winner is awarded a costume and a supervillain name, Spymaster. A decent outfit, but kind of a terrible name. The previous Spymaster had been killed by fellow supervillain Ghost a few issues previously. Tony Stark's enemy Justin Hammer hired Taskmaster to train a new Spymaster to work for him to take down Stark Enterprises. Later, at Tony Stark's event, a bunch of kids beg the Santa there for toys, and one of them notices that Santa has a gun. Santa holds the kid hostage, pulls down his face mask, and in the next panel seems to have pulled off the entire Santa suit while still holding the child at gunpoint. With skills like that, this man truly deserves to be the next Spymaster. Spymaster fights Iron Man with weapons like power nunchucks, and Iron Man just wants to keep everyone safe, so he asks what Spymaster is after. Turns out he was just sent to steal the Christmas tree topper, a meaningless trinket which Iron Man allows him to take and leave. It was all just a further test for Spymaster. While this story isn't an all-time classic, it is part of a run by Bob Layton that included classic Iron Man storylines like Demon in a Bottle and Armor Wars, and transitioned the action into corporate espionage, which helped differentiate Iron Man from other superheroes. This bad Santa is one of the most successful on the list, although I'm still trying to figure out how he pulled that whole suit off so quickly and easily. Do you think that if he pulled off his spandex gear, he has another suit underneath? I do. I definitely do. The following year gave us another Santa in a Marvel story, and again, it was written by Peter David. This one was part of his long, well-regarded run on The Incredible Hulk during the time when Bruce Banner would turn into a smart and cunning Grey Hulk at night. Issue 378 had art by guest artist Bill Jaska and was co-written with Kurt Busiek. It begins by following supervillain Rhino, who is living in an alley and is miserable that he's stuck in his superpowered suit and has no friends. Christmas is the end of the year, and it's common for people to get depressed like this. Rhino knocks out a Salvation Army Santa and puts on the costume presumably to steal a bit of money for himself. But a mall worker sees him and begs for him to come inside and help them because the regular mall Santa showed up drunk. Rhino goes along with it at first to avoid making a scene, but when the kids cheer for him, he's brought to tears, having only ever been looked at with terror before now. However, Rhino's bad impulses take over as the kids sitting on his lap beg endlessly for toys, and he snaps, yelling at them. Meanwhile, Bruce Banner happens to be at the same mall and turns into the Hulk in the bathroom. Rhino has his beard yanked off by a bratty kid and tosses the kid, but Hulk shows up in time to save him. A traditional brawl ensues, only briefly broken up by an oblivious woman offering cookie samples. Unfortunately, Rhino hates macadamia nuts, and the fight continues into a bowling alley, complete with Hulk telling Rhino anyone with balls can beat him. Rhino briefly gets the upper hand when some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents try and help and are instead about to get squashed by the supervillain. But Hulk just took that opportunity to put on a Santa hat and beard and beat Rhino up some more. The fight pauses again when a little girl asks Santa why he's fighting. The two men don't have the heart to break the illusion of Santa for the little girl, and Santa and his helper spend the rest of the night listening to kids ask for toys. That may not seem like the most realistic ending to a superhero fight, but the entire story is being told to some kids by Hulk's friend Rick Jones, so he may not be a reliable narrator. Nevertheless, that's 3 bad guys dressed up like Santa and fighting a superhero in a row, so it's time for something new. A Santa so badass that he can knife fight the supervillain Lobo. In 1991, writers Keith Giffen and Alan Grant teamed up with artist Simon Beasley to deliver one of the most over-the-top, violent comics satirizing the holidays with the Lobo Paramilitary Christmas Special. Lobo, an alien mercenary who lives his life as a badass biker, takes a contract from the Easter Bunny. The Easter Bunny says Santa has gotten too big, and he's made all the other holidays seem much too small in comparison. Lobo will take any contract where the money's good and quickly shows up at the North Pole, gunning down armies of Santa's elves. Santa himself is not intimidated by Lobo at all, and they decide to settle their fight with machetes. The fight is quick, and Lobo decapitates Santa. But for my money, Beasley is the best artist to work on Lobo. He adds angular lines, thick, sinewy muscles, and gnarly detail to the carnage. But wait, I'm Santa. Was this all just one big self-report? No, let's just say that, I don't know, that took place in an alternate timeline. Something like that. Yeah, that works. All I can say is this book is the most violent out of all the books that we're going to look at today, but it's also humorous. Well, it's black humor. Very black. This is one dark comic book, but it's pretty cool. This is also a good time to mention that we're halfway through this episode, and speaking of half, you should know that Chris, the host of this program, because I'm Santa, has gone part-time at his job in order to try to make more YouTube content. So, if you want to support that for as little as $1, check out the link to the Comic Tropes Patreon in the description below. Okay, so that was the first DC comic to have a bad Santa, and the next 2 were also from DC Comics. Hitman was a comic by Garth Ennis and John McCrea that took place in the DC universe, but pretty much just skewered the idea of superheroes. Ennis has been pretty open about not being much of a fan of them. Hitman, also known as Tommy Monahan, technically has the superpower of X-ray vision, but the stories are mostly him and his friend Nat taking on assassination jobs in Gotham City. Issue 22 is about a radioactive monster Santa Claus. Bob is a surly janitor said to hate Christmas. On Christmas Eve, a coworker bursts through a door and knocks poor Bob into some radioactive waste below. but Bob emerges feeling powerful and confident that he can be a superhero. However, his touch melts one coworker, and a second observes that he seems to have more of a super-villain type of power. Bob melts his coworkers and sets out into the streets in a Santa suit. The power plant boss and his assistant determine that the best course of action is to hire a professional to discreetly kill Bob. Tommy accepts the job, and he and his friend drive around town looking for Bob as Bob continues to melt those he encounters. Eventually, Tommy sees Bob, and he and Nat hit him with their car, then hit the brakes, sending Bob flying into a wall head first. Tommy and Nat hit him with the car a second time, pinning him against the wall, and that seems to bring Bob to his senses. He begins begging for forgiveness. But the book is called Hitman, and the two simply gun Bob down. This is a pretty cynical story, actually. In some ways, maybe more cynical than the Lobo story, which had Santa exploiting his elves, working them relentlessly. But humor is up to the individual, so as to how much you appreciate it, well, this might just be the Christmas story for you. Who can say? But while we're talking about Gotham City, let's check in on the most famous resident, Commissioner Gordon. Or Batman. I guess we can check in on Batman. Before Ed Brubaker made his name writing Captain America and Criminal, he had a well-received run on Batman with Scott McDaniel on art duties. Issue 596 is a Christmas-themed issue where the police partner with Batman to track down an escaped maniac. This man was poisoned by the Joker a few issues earlier. He has a German accent, but no one knows his name. He also dresses up like Santa, so the Arkham guards named him Santa Claus. Batman explains that Klaus believes that he is psychic, and he can tell when people have been naughty or nice. Santa Claus escapes Arkham and encounters two elves with guns planning to hold him up. Instead, he convinces them to assist him. They then go about bombing businesses that night while Batman tracks him down. Ultimately, Santa Claus stumbles into a fire that he caused, and Batman puts him out with his cape, saving his life and ending his crime spree. This is a pretty short story, honestly. It doesn't have any deep mystery, just a villain with an amusing gimmick who doesn't really prove to be enough of a threat to Batman for future writers to want to use again. So, just as well, all these folks are ruining my good name. So, now let's get another drink and we'll move on to one of the weirder Bad Santa stories. In 2006, Marvel had writer Mark Guggenheim, best known for his work on TV shows like Arrow and Flash, write a Blade the Vampire Hunter ongoing book. Issue 4 features art by the legendary Howard Chaykin, in a strange story where Blade is just trying to stay off the police's radar in the small town of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. But one day, Blade is hanging out at the mall, his favorite activity, when he senses something off about the mall Santa. Blade tries to be discreet, but Santa refuses to get up and talk, and Blade quickly realizes that he's dealing with a powerful demon called Animus. Animus can possess anyone with a soul and jumps around from the Santa to a little girl, attacking Blade but making him look suspicious since he's fighting Santa and a kid. Animus quickly proves how dangerous he can be by possessing a police officer and forcing him to shoot himself. He also forces a bystander to gouge out his own eyes. Without a way to save everyone, Blade makes the tough decision to kill Dan the Mall Santa and continue on the run from the police. This one is actually a pretty depressing Mall Santa story. The Santa isn't even actually a bad guy. He's just a poor, innocent person possessed by an evil force. It probably won't put you in the Christmas spirit, but it gives you a decent monster story with a weird setting and characters. So let's wrap up this list with 2 examples of more amusing Bad Santa stories. The 2018 run on Deadpool features Scotty Young on writing duties instead of art, but with the extremely capable Nick Klein handling the art. This quick story begins with kids realizing Santa skipped them on Christmas, so they pool their money to hire Deadpool to head to the North Pole to kill the guy who ruined Christmas. But when Deadpool arrives at the mostly empty house of Santa, he finds Santa skinny, drunk, and ready to fight. Santa gets in more than a few good shots against Deadpool with a massive hammer, but the mercenary does have healing powers and quickly subdues Santa with a headbutt and a compound fracture. But Deadpool still can't bring himself to kill Santa. Santa reveals what happened. His elf, Tinsel, was wooed by evil company Roxxon to lead an elf strike and walkout. The elves now work for Roxxon under Tinsel's cruel control. Deadpool realizes he wasn't necessarily hired to kill Santa, but the guy who ruined Christmas. So Deadpool heads south and tracks down Tinsel. After completing his assignment, Deadpool does his best to save Christmas by loading up Santa's sleigh and tossing packages willy-nilly down the streets, hoping for the best. This issue was pretty amusing, and the artwork was fantastic. I liked it a lot. Not the least because it portrayed me, and I am Santa, remember, it portrayed me as not exactly evil, just temporarily misled and down on his luck. There's still one last bad Santa story, though, and it's the weirdest by far. Last year, there was a big Marvel event called The King in Black. It was about the villain Null, who controlled the Venom symbiote and all the symbiotes for that matter. In this one-shot set during that event, Iron Man's armor is corrupted by a symbiote, but Iron Man teams up with Dr. Doom, who I guess is giving a shot at being a good guy, to take down something monstrous. They see something overhead during December, and that something is a sleigh, reindeer, and Santa. Dr. Doom insists that Santa is just folklore, but Iron Man points out that it's Santa right in front of them. Doom uses his blasters to eliminate the reindeer, and Santa plummets to the streets below, but he is unfazed and ready to battle the two armored warriors. The twisted version of Santa spews out tendrils of symbiote goo, but Iron Man blasts back and there is a huge explosion. As the dust settles, Santa awakes from a fog. He notes that Iron Man, Tony, is a good boy, but Doom, or Victor, is one of the naughtiest. Iron Man picks up his driver's license and notes that he's just a guy from Paramus, New Jersey. Thinking about it later, Doom wonders how that man knew their names and deeds, and Iron Man points out that they're both public figures, and that if Doom wants to believe in Santa, there are less weird things in the world to believe. Doom dismisses this as preposterous, but the story ends with him wondering if Santa Claus could exist as a sorcerer. This is a nice close to a look at some comic books featuring some Santas gone bad. My favorites include the Vault of Horror, Lobo, and Deadpool ones, but there's probably a few out there that even I, Santa Claus, don't know about. So tell me, what's your favorite story featuring a bad version of Santa Claus? Happy holidays, everyone. Comic Tropes will be back next week, and until then, keep reading comics. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please consider hitting like and subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, there are merchandise links beneath the YouTube video, and you can always hit join on YouTube or visit Comic Tropes on Patreon to get access to special perks.